an elevated life is available to you. No matter, I say that to every single person that's listening to this. I believe in signs. I believe people hear the things they need to hear. And I believe that if you're listening to this podcast and you've gotten to this point, this is a sign for you. Like an elevated life is available to you for you to tap into.
Welcome my guest, Mallory Ervin. Mallory is a Kentucky-grown, Nashville-living dreamer who has a roundabout way of arriving at today. From her time in Miss America pageant to being a 3-time contestant on The Amazing Race, Mallory turned her passion for sharing love, fashion, beauty, and life into a platform for impact. Today, she runs a global lifestyle brand she founded in 2016, hosts a Living Fully podcast wherein she encourages and inspires her dedicated following to seek joy and live fully. And she appears across platforms ranging from Instagram to YouTube, sharing her life and message of living fully. And today she welcomes her newest book, Living Fully, Dare to Step into Your Most Vibrant Life. Well, welcome to another episode on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I'm with the very vibrant and beautiful Mallory Ervin. Thank you so much for being on the show. As I told you, I'm just so excited for this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, Erica. You are also vibrant and just radiating a lot of good stuff as well, just in our little conversation off the podcast. So thank you for having me. You're so sweet.
Thank you. Well, it's truly an honor. And I must share, the first time I discovered you, I was following your Instagram. I don't know how I stumbled upon your Instagram, but I thought to myself, the words living fully just captured me completely, because those were the words that I express so very often myself. I always use the hashtag living fully alive. And so when I saw that I think I saw your podcast launch, it was called Living Fully. And I'm like, she took my words. I'm like, if only, no, it was really just, I admired it because that was just one thing that I feel speaks volumes of living fully and what that means. And I would always share, like, be your most vibrant, authentic self. And so it spoke volumes to me. And from then on, I started following you and just tuning into your podcast, and then now receiving your book, Living Fully. And I'm just so excited to have this conversation of all the goodness you share about this concept, what it means to truly live fully.
Yes. Yes. So it's so funny that you said that too, because in the process of like branding myself, I came from a crazy path to here. I did Miss America and reality TV, and here I am with all of these online facets to my business. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel, a merch company, a book. And about 6 or so years ago, when I was thinking, what is the phrase that describes my brand? It was always live fully. It was always live fully. Well, probably as I do, having a business, the trademarking process, you go through and you see like, what are the things that people already have taken for what categories you're going to use it for. And then like I had signed my book deal about 4 or so years ago, before I'd started my podcast or anything. And I was like, you know what? It's actually more like living fully. So when we went through the process of like trademarking living fully, which everybody had all kinds of things, or variations of living fully alive or living fully healthfully, or, there were all these things, but living fully was there for me. And I was like, that's perfect. It perfectly describes how I feel I want people to live their lives, and how I feel my journey led me to live my own life. So that's funny. Great minds think alike.
Yes. And actually I went through the process because I'm in the process of trademarking a name as well. And it's not my podcast name, but it's something else that is coming out soon. And I'm in that process. Long story, but yes. And you search the names that are available. And it's so great when you find that one, you're like, that's it. And it calls to you and you're like, I'm going to grab it, because if it really, sparks that interest, I think sometimes you just got to go for it.
Yes.
So
agreed.
Well, I want to first by asking you, what does living fully mean to you? What's the definition?
So it means a lot of different things. And there are a lot of times in my life where living fully looks different than they do in other seasons. You are so sweet and such a great podcast host to read the books of all of your guests. And I know you're 30 pages from the end of the book, so you know this about my book, but I have so many different chapters that embody different definitions of what it means to live a full life. Sometimes like living fully is just like, it's truly that. It's living fully. It's living a life that's vibrant, that has all the colors, that is so bright, but it's because you also experience the dark. It's living a life that it feels congruent and true to you. It's living a life that you feel like you are living a legacy, that people are going to talk about you in 50 years and they're going to say, this is how she was. This is how she lived her life. It's living that way every day, not when you're like 65 and thinking about retirement and like how you want to be remembered. It's very much living that like from an early age and every day. And, you know, living fully is, it's a journey that I've also been on myself. I was always, this perfect child with a really great childhood. I was a high achiever. I was the oldest of 24 first cousins that grew up on a farm together in Kentucky. And being the oldest of all my siblings, but also of all of these family members that I was around every day of my life, it prompted me to be an achiever and to be someone that really loved doing things and was praised for the things that I did. And that was never a thing that was crippling to me until I got out of college. I started doing the Miss America pageant. I was Miss Kentucky in 2009, and I was a runner-up in Miss America in 2010. And I know you and I have a similar journey in that, there are aspects of pageants that are similar to your journey with, being a fit model and different stuff. Like you become known for something that is admired and this polished vision of yourself and the way that you look. And I think it kind of, the seed was planted there. And then I did reality television after that. I did 3 seasons of The Amazing Race. So here I am succeeding as a young person, but succeeding very publicly. So in my mind, I kept thinking I have to keep topping the things that I did in my life and topping them over and over. And it became something that crippled me. It crippled me from taking risks and chances. It made me start to become reclusive. I was prescribed a couple of prescription medications that I started spiraling out of control with, because I just felt like I couldn't get it right. I couldn't get like on the right path. I felt like empty. And I felt like if I didn't achieve something greater than what I'd done before, that it was, my life just like was over. Like that was the only thing that I was put here to do. And ultimately it led me into a treatment program. And it was the biggest shift in my life. And it's when I really learned what living fully means. I was there for about 6 months, and it was the first like low that I'd hit like that. I almost lost my life to this. And so like, going through something like that, I come off the Miss America stage and like, Sunday night television to 6 months in a treatment facility. Like it really turned my life upside down, but it was the biggest catalyst to the way that I live now, because everybody that's listening to this podcast, and you and I both know that the hard things that we walk through in life and facing adversity instead of numbing everything out, which is something everybody does these days, it leads to the most vibrant life. It leads to higher levels of joy and higher levels of happiness. And so many people just want to be comfortable and easy and live their lives on cruise control, that they never learn to live fully because they don't want to touch a nerve and they don't want to explore that. They just want everything to be fine. And so like living fully means something different to me now. But it is just this way of life that it takes life for what it is. And it really, it unlocks a whole new level of living that I didn't know before I went through that in my life.
Okay, you shared so much in that.
Sorry,
and
that
I'm
was a
sure
long answer.
No, that's so great, because I think so many people could relate to what you just shared in so many different ways, right? The whole being a high achiever. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening now that feel like their identity is wrapped into their achievements. And you spoke on to something that, thank you for doing your research a little bit on my story, is having this identity wrapped into your career or your success. You could get really twisted in it. And so much so that it could be your driving force to do more, which it could be a good thing, right? Until it's not. And so
any good thing can turn into a bad thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk deeper into this, because I think it's super important. So there's so much of your story, of course, in your book, and obviously sharing on all your platforms and everything. And there's so much to it that we won't get into all today, because I want people to read your book. But you going into treatment, I would love to know, what was a catalyst that brought you there? And then in treatment, can you break down like your really like the pivotal moments that changed the trajectory of your life?
Yes. So anything like an addiction or like any sort of numbing behavior, it doesn't have to be an addiction to a substance. We as a culture are addicted to so many things, to social media and to praise from other people and to, shopping and spending money. I mean, it can be something that is very much not what you would think that would be something that would send you to a treatment program. But the thing that all these things have in common is they happen very slowly and gradually over time. And it happens so slowly that a lot of times you don't see the place that you're at until it's too late. And I was getting to a point. So this had gone on in my life for about 5 years. And I just kept thinking in the back of my head, like, I just feel empty. I feel like not only can I not find a job or a career path or a life partner or all these things that you aspire to find in your 20s, but I also just felt like my soul and my spirit had like left the building. I felt dead inside. I felt like a totally different version of myself. And I was moody and like edgy, and I just felt like a shell of who I had been. And despite all that, just like the addictive mind is, or any mind that doesn't really want to face what's really going on, I didn't think, oh, it's the medications that I'm taking. Before I started taking these medications, I felt like myself and everything was going great. But it's this medication that I'm taking and this obsessive need to keep achieving these public facing success things. So despite the fact that literally I was going to doctors, Erica, in Nashville, and I still remember this like it was yesterday. I had a doctor look at me and say, I don't know what you're doing, but if you continue to do this, you will not be alive for much longer because of my vitals. And like I was having major health problems due to this addiction that had gone off the rails. And despite all that, and a doctor looking at me and saying, you're going to die soon, I thought in the back of my mind, I've lived a good life, and I would rather go out like this than be vulnerable and let people know like that I'm suffering so badly with whatever is going on in my life. So the catalyst for me was really my family. Like I said, I grew up on this farm in Kentucky. They still live there. I lived in Nashville. It's about 2 hours away. And I went home one weekend for an event because I was still a high achiever. I was still emceeing the events. I was still doing these things on the outside. I was just dying on the inside. And my parents and the people around me were like, what is wrong with you? Something is totally off. It was like I was a totally different person. And it was very obvious that something was going on. And we had never had anyone in my family to ever be in recovery or go to a treatment center. So they literally took away my keys and started Googling, like, what do we do? If somebody listening to this podcast has somebody that's ever been in the recovery world in my life, like those, you can't approach a person that has a problem and say, hey, you got a problem. Let's fix this problem. It is very hard to get that person to understand, even though they know how bad things are, what their next step needs to be. So I was kind of forced into this decision. I had nothing going for me anymore. I just felt so awful that it just seemed like whatever. I didn't think I needed to go there. I'd never done an illegal drug in my life. I thought, I'm not doing drugs. They're going to send me home. And not only did they keep me there, but they kept me there for like 5.5 months. But I will say the catalysts to change for me were when I chose to stay there. So there were two big things that happened to me. If you asked me, if you were like, tell me the two biggest takeaways from this program that changed your life forever, I wouldn't even list sobriety as the top two. I would list it as 3. Wow. So number one, so I'd been there for about 6 weeks. I'd been there for like a few weeks. So after the 30-day program, they suggested I go to this extended care program. And I was just floored that they had even recommended this for me. I thought I'd be out in 30 days, turn my life around. I'd write a book. We'd do podcasts. I was like, this makes me more relatable. I understand now, the delusions that I had then are just, it's funny to think about now. But, and you'll be able to relate to this one too. So it's the story that I opened the book with, where they're taking my hair extensions out for the first time in 10 years. So, we just talked about how we have this thing in common where your identity gets really intertwined in the way that you look, not only for yourself, but for other people too. So I'd had long blonde hair extensions my whole life for like 10 years, never had them out. And they were starting to fall out in treatment and all this stuff. I'd been there for long enough to where they were like, we're going to let you go and get your hair done. And they were going to take my hair extensions out and I was going to come back to the facility. And I was like, okay, perfect. I need to get my hair done. I have these long roots and my hair's falling out. But when they took my hair extensions out facing backwards, I wasn't facing a mirror. And when she took the last piece out and turned my chair around to see myself in the mirror, and my hair was like 2 inches long and all broken off and just like disgusting. I had an out of body experience and it was like the lowest low I'd ever hit in my life. I did not know myself without that hair. I felt like I wanted to literally die. And that's the closest that I came to leaving that treatment center, not going through withdrawals, not having to like dig deep and find out when they took my hair out. And that was a pretty big indicator for me that I had some really deep-seated attachments that were holding me back and that had brought me here in the first place. It's never just, I've all of a sudden happened upon a drug addiction. It's always something underneath that that guides you there. And that was my first big ding, 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 like this, you are attached to something externally that is so tangled up in who you are that you literally wanted to die when they took your hair out. And I almost left treatment then, but it was a big catalyst for me when I stayed because I knew it was going to be hard work that I had to do. I knew there were things. I was shocked when that happened to me, even though I knew I probably had some like attachments to achievement and perfectionism and appearance. It was feeling that like earth shatter beneath me because they took my hair out. And I wrote a lot about that in Living Fully because I think attachments are really tricky. And if you become attached to, it can even be a good thing. If you become attached to being known as a certain type of person or your image, the way that you look, or maybe it's being a certain type of mom to the other moms at the kids at your school. Or maybe it's something totally good like that, being a really high achiever that's really giving the heck out of yourself to your company. If you become so attached to that, over connected to the person that you truly are, or that you're totally disconnected from the person that you truly are. I didn't even know who I was anymore. It is very dangerous and it is a block to living fully. So that was a huge thing for me. And then also another thing happened to me that was similar to this. So I'll tell the story quickly, but there was this chapel service on Sundays that everybody used to go to. And I was the singer. That was my last like special thing. They'd already taken my hair out and I'd gained 30 pounds. And here I am, I've been here for 4 months. But they were still letting me sing and everybody would bring their families and be like, my friend Mallory, she sings. And so it made me feel special and not average. And it was still this last shred of like, I know I'm here and I know my life like has crumbled, but look at me and like my talent and what I can do. It was my last thing, and they took that privilege away from me. And that was another moment where I did not understand why they were doing that, because something like sharing your talent at a service on Sunday would never seem like something that was a bad thing. And now for me, it's not, but I was hanging on to it and I was holding it in front of myself and being like, just see this, please. Like, don't look at me for this person in this treatment facility who has ended up here after being handed everything in the world. Please see me as someone that's still special and not average. And those were two things that I learned in that 5.5 month span that I was there that were pivotal to my life. They're things that I still think about and keep in the back of my mind even today. And they're things that I wrote about a lot in Living Fully because it's something that we all do, whether you're in a treatment facility or whether you're in a pickup line at school. So those would be the two things I think that or big things for me, takeaways.
Yeah. And I love how you shared this so openly because, as you mentioned, things on the surface level are not truly generally the problem. It's usually the root, like go deeper, really peel the onion, like what is really going on. And I think it's so amazing that you share this because I don't think a lot of people think about the attachments they have to things, this identity, and the identity we have for ourselves is the biggest driving force to what we do and how we operate and how we feel. So knowing what you're attached to, healthy or unhealthy, you need to understand that that is a driving force to how you react and operate in the world. And so I think it's important for anybody listening now is how do we discover those attachments that are kind of running our life opposed to the true person, our truest, highest self, so how would you say somebody could discover that without being in treatment? And like, what would you say as like a tangible tools to really get to that keen awareness of what's driving us and if it's unhealthy?
I think a very easy way is how you identify yourself to other people. When you introduce yourself to someone, what is the thing that you make sure they know about you in the first 30 seconds of the conversation? That's a big, easy indicator right there. When I used to, before I went through what I went through, introduce myself, I would want to make sure you knew I had done Miss America and The Amazing Race and all of those big things that I'd done, even if I was 5 years removed from it, I needed you to know that. And those were big attachments for me, my titles and the former achievements that I'd had. So I think that's a really easy way to do that. But also, I want you to think, if you're a person listening to this podcast, if you had to strip away all of your achievements, all of your accolades, anything you've ever done, good or bad, because you could also be attached to a story of trauma. Trauma is a whole different thing that I think you need to work through with a professional a lot of times. But you can even be attached to the bad things that have happened to you and carrying those like a heavy backpack on your back through the rest of your life. And it is terrible, the things that people go through. I'm not undermining or diminishing it, being attached to trauma, because I know that there's major stuff that goes on in the brain when you go through something like that causes you sometimes to do that. But I want you to think about, like, if you stripped all that away and you were just like walking around the world as like an average Joe or like an average Jane, how would you feel? Like, if you would ask me that, I would want to wrap myself up in all my successes and everything, all those titles and everything as quickly as possible. I could not have stood in the world without all those things. I didn't feel like I was enough to stand in the world on my own. I didn't know who I was underneath all those things. I thought those things were who I was. So if you can just think about how you would feel if you took away all those things that you're proud of. If you couldn't say, I have, 3 kids that are on the honor roll or whatever, or I started this business, or how would you feel like showing up in a conversation? If you would feel great, I would say you do not have attachments to those types of things. If you would feel like, I don't even know what I would say, like, and you start clinging for like other things, or you would say, I wouldn't want to introduce myself like that. This is important to me, and feeling like very defensive of taking those things away, I think that's an indicator. But anything that you obsessively think about, I think is an attachment. And I talk a lot about like obsessive thinking in that chapter, Ignore the Noise. I think people just like you can become addicted to drugs, I think that people can become addicted to low energy thinking and like low pattern thinking. You can just get on this loop, and this is the way that you think, and you know it's bad for you, just like taking a drug or a drink, but you cannot stop it. So those are 3 like easy things, I would say.
That's great. I love that. That's a great way to start, at least really just peeling the onion and really understanding what's driving you and the way you think about things, and feeling, most importantly, because emotion drives everything. So going into the concept living fully, you share so much in this book and in so many different ways. And I think one of the ones that I'm thinking of right now is leaving the legacy, like you spoke about earlier, and what to actually get to this thinking of like, what's the legacy I want to live? What do you feel is like the foundational piece to, building that for yourself and living with that mindset of living fully?
I think that shifting the perspective that a legacy is not something that you leave behind, it's something that you're living today. I think that's the first thing that you need to do. I was from a family, Erica, this is just a bizarre family to be from, but like is an amazing family to be from, that was obsessed with legacy, that was obsessed with teaching us from the time we were little about thinking about legacy. We would meet quarterly, even though we all lived on the same farm. We did these like quarterly intentional family retreats where we talk about legacy and who we were in the world, how we spent our money in the world, it was a very intentional thing that we did in this family unit. And they would always ask us from the time we were little kids, they would be like, what is your legacy? What is your legacy? And we would all be like, are y'all crazy? Like, what is my legacy? I'm like 15. I don't know. I'm not doing a little legacy thing yet. I'm going to wait for 50 years. But it planted a seed that now I'm very passionate about. And, I'm in my 30s now. And I am very much, it's so important to me that I included it in one of the chapters in my book, because I think that it is critical that if you really want to live a bigger life and you really want to live a full life and a vibrant life and an authentic life to the one that you really feel like you want to live, you have to think of yourself as like living in legacy mode, as living every day, as when you walk into the house after a day of work, how your kids greet you and your husband and the attention that you give, that's your legacy. That's how your kids are going to remember you. It's in the day to day. So many people want to wait until the end of their lives to think about, how do I want to be remembered? What am I going to leave behind? How will people describe me when I'm not here anymore? And I believe that our generation, we're similar to the same age, our generation is, we are living so fast and so on our phones and feeling you have to take your phone into the bathroom with you because you can't have 3 seconds without being connected to something that you're watching or scrolling or immersed in. And no one is taking the time to think, like, how healthfully think, how do people view me? How do people feel in my presence? Like, do people feel, am I the person that people come to like with an issue because it makes them feel better when they talk to me? Or do people feel on edge and tense and stressed when they come to my house because of what I'm putting off? Is that the legacy that you want to leave? So, awareness and perspective is really big in a legacy conversation, because it is certainly not an end of your life thing. It is very much a thing that you should think of every day. And in my life, very simple, tangible things that I do whenever I make decisions, big decisions, I think of legacy. I think of, what do I want to leave behind, but how can I do this today? Whether it is making a decision about where I want to send my children to school, or buying a home, or which business do I want to start. I have a lot of businesses. And whenever I was thinking of like, do I start a podcast or a merchandise business? Or do I start a this or that? I think of, what's the legacy I want to leave? Oh, podcasts, they help people. This is a really big thing. This is a part of the legacy I want to leave. This more so than this, I try to bring it into decisions, into the way that I live my everyday life, parent and love and give. And it's very effective for me to just shift that perspective, that it's not something that you leave behind at the end of your life, but that it's very much something you're living in the here and now.
That's so perfect. And you said, I remember in the book, you said it's a daily choice. Living fully is a daily choice, and being very intentional, of course, in your decisions is so, so key to living fully. Really being aware of like the every moment. And the only way we could be more aware is we put the distractions away and the external noise away. And I know it's so hard for so many of us because we've formed this addiction that we don't even know of. Talking about addictions, it's pretty darn insane. And you have kids, so I'm sure you're trying to somewhat manage those addictions and keep, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. I don't know what this next generation who has never, I at least was of the generation that lived without a phone. Right. I was 16 before I got my first cell phone. I did not have a device in my hand from age 3 to 16.
Yeah.
And I wonder what the repercussions will be. There are wonderful things that come along with technology and having access to it, but there are pros and cons. There are two sides of every coin. Yeah. And social media and kids being on social media is very tough, and something that, my kids are 2 and 3. I don't really have to make much more of a choice other than like what I want to show of them on my social media. But that's something that I'm going to have to be really intentional and really put like a legacy that I want to leave? Like, how do I want my kids to, how do I want to have a hand in shaping my kids' relationships with these devices while I can shape them? Eventually, I'm not going to be the one that the world will shape your kids too. I'm not ignorant of that. I very much understand that, like, I cannot cradle them for the rest of their lives. So it's scary to think of, honestly. And I'm not scared of very much, but that does scare me.
Yeah, I agree. So one important question, of course, for anybody listening that is dealing with, let's say they feel like, as you felt before, that just this emptiness, there's been so much stress in the world, so much adversity we're going through, like such an insane time. I mean, it's like insane time after insane time.
I know.
It's surreal. So for anybody that feels just this overwhelmed, because of course the outside world does affect us emotionally. Obviously, we have to kind of manage what we can and control what we can.
Yes.
But for anybody feeling the struggle and trying to, obviously they're inspired by you. They want to know how could I live fully? How could I feel vibrant and alive again? I think that is should be the goal in life, is to live fully every day. So for those people that are in that space and avoid, kind of dealing with the hard emotions, like they don't want to step outside their comfort zone because they're afraid of the unknown, failures and whatnot. And I'm sure you, being a perfectionist as you were before, I'm sure you were constantly stepping outside of your uncomfortable zone. But what would you say to that person that is just feeling, dim, and that they're just wondering what to do with their lives? They have not really quite sure their passion, their purpose, and their emotions are heavy. What would you say are the 3 first steps they should take?
I would say first, I have been there, and I am a person who felt the most despair that I think I humanly could feel. Felt empty and alone, and like I had just failed everybody in my life. And now the life that I live is so full and full of joy and vibrance. It's a word you and I both like. And just it's overflowing with good stuff. So I would first say that there's a path there for everyone. You do not have to be born under a lucky star. You do not have to have a ton of money. You do not have to be in the relationship of your dreams. It is available to everyone. I understand that some people will have more steps to get to the starting line than others. And I hate that, because I think that there is a lot of adversity that people are just born into. And, I very much understand that. But I do think no matter how much you are born into, no matter the heaviness of your emotions, like there is a way out. So I will first say that. But I'll first say to that person, look at your life. Okay, so we're talking to the person that the emotions are heavy. So I think first of all, you have to have that perspective shift of like, this is available to me. I can do this. Also, I think people are very afraid to do things that they think are a huge life overhaul. This does not have to be a huge life overhaul. Living fully is very much something that you can do alongside just living your everyday life. But you have to want a bigger life, at least 1% more than you want easy, comfortable, status quo. I understand the allure. If you're looking at 2 doors, why open door number 2? Door number 1, everything that's behind it. It's comfortable. It's familiar. Why are you going to open door number 2? Behind door number 2 might be adversity. It might be hard things. It might be things that you've been afraid of for a long time. But I can promise you, if you decide to open door number 2, and if you face those things, on the other side of that is a life beyond your wildest dreams that is so much better than this same old door that you're opening. And if you are feeling heavy emotions, and if you are feeling like this is too much to do, this is too hard. I've very much thought that. I almost left treatment like 3 times because it was very, very hard. But now, just living on the other side of it, I am so grateful, because I lived a great life before, absence of a lot of bad. And the way that I live now, having faced things and not brushing painful things under the rug, having hard conversations in my life, taking risks and chances and doing things that I'm not familiar with, it's so much better than it was with just the absence of bad. So I would say also remembering that like the absence of bad isn't a qualifier for a good life. I think that so many people confuse just nothing bad's going on in my life, so it's fine. It's good. This is the way that I'm meant to live. That is not living fully. That is the opposite of living fully. That is like, or if you think that way, you just have to shift that perspective. And then another thing that I would say is if you do not take the time, if you're wallowing in the heaviness of your emotions constantly, and you're constantly naming off and thinking about and dwelling on and obsessing over all of the bad and the hard and the unfair in your life, like you're going to stay right there. You have to want this life more, and you have to pull yourself up from that. If I had stayed in these emotions of I don't know what to do and I can't take a step forward, I would have died in my addiction 100%. But I chose, partly with the help from professionals, because my case got to that point. There are going to be people that listen to this that may need to do some of this work alongside a professional, but there are going to be people that just need to change habits in their life. Shifting habits in your life is such a huge thing that can make such big ripples in the water that if you just don't live like, if you just can decide I'm not going to live the same way and I'm not just going to be comfortable, I'm going to do this hard thing and start making those moves, it's like, as a snowball starts rolling down a hill, the momentum gets going and then you see how much better you feel. So to kind of wrap that up though, shifting perspective, remembering like the absence of bad is not a qualifier for good, remembering this is available to you. And you have to get out of this spiral and this cycle. And how you do that is you have to take enough time to become aware of the things that you need to change in your life. You can't walk into a therapist's office and they tell you right off the bat, here are the things that you need to change. I'm going to send you out with like 3 things. Maybe they can eventually after several sessions, but you have to take the time. And a lot of people won't take the time because they're filling every second of their lives with a numbing behavior, with their cell phones, with whatever it is. They won't stop and face their life. And you have to face your life. You have to see the things that are missing, the things that you're doing that are sabotaging you, living a full life. You have to face those things, or you cannot work on things that you don't know to work on. So that's what I would say to those people. And then, there is another version of that person too. That's a person that maybe just thinks their life is like, okay. And they're the person that thinks that because nothing bad's going on, that this is good. And that's a person that I think can break through to a full life too, because I think that,
I'm fine. I'm just fine. Yes. You talk about this in the book and I love this section because there's so much goodness, because like you said, so many people just stay in like, I'm okay, I'm fine. And you said that's a new rock bottom. So anyways, I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but it's
thank you for reading my book.
So true.
So you knowing the book so well. But yes, I think in the beginning of my book, I had a real rock bottom. The red flag waving, the people have to step in, they have to send you to a program. That's rock bottom, red flags. It's almost easier when you have a rock bottom like that, where it's so obvious, you know what to do with that person, the avenue of treatment to get them to a better life. The person that is the hardest to break through to living fully is this person in the middle. It's the person I am now. It's the mom of 2 with all the businesses that's doing all these things, that's so busy, they can't take the time to assess their lives. And they just think that, why rock the boat? Why rock the boat? Yeah, of course I want a better life, but like, this is fine. I don't really want a worse life, so I'm not going to try for the better life. And that is the person that I wrote a whole half of this book to, because I do believe that like fine is the new version of rock bottom. And I think that fine is a dangerous place to be, because when you don't have to make the change and when people around you don't see red flags, you're the one that has to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and say, you know what? I wake up in the morning and I do not feel like this is the life I'm meant to live. I feel like there's more. I know this is the only shot that I get, and I am going to find a way to fullness and to a bigger life and to an elevated version of living, even if that means like rocking the boat just a little bit, facing things that I don't want to face. So that's why I think that that's the person that I'm talking to, and that probably is listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, because the people that are listening in, obviously they're on the path of growth. They are intrigued,
Yes.
interested, ready to be inspired, empowered, and whatnot. But yes, maybe they are in that kind of mediocre, mundane life. Life is good. They have a steady job, like they're doing what they love. But yes, that next level, living fully. And there's so much you share in your book and all these stories and all these tangible tools that we could apply into our life and really do the work, because it does start with awareness, knowing where you're at, so you could, set a path to where you want to go in that end goal. And I don't even think there should be this end goal. It's living in the moment of living fully. It's every day making the choice. So I want to really honor your time. Of course, I know that you got to run because you're a busy, busy woman, as you were talking about.
You are too. Thank you for
So again, everybody go grab the book. Like I said, I've read through, I'm almost done, and there's so much goodness, and this gorgeous lady is on the cover, Mallory. So just to close off, of course, I will plug everything in the show notes and go follow Mallory at Mallory Ervin. That's your hashtag, right?
Instagram is just like MalloryErvin.com has everything, YouTube, merch, Instagram, book, everything. But yeah, Instagram is just at Mallory Ervin. That's where we are mostly.
And I love your merchandise, by the way. And I think some things are sold out. So I need to find out how I could get
all that sold out. I know it sells out in like 30 minutes, but it's been a fun thing. It's really fun.
Well, let me close off and just asking, this is what I ask all my guests. And of course, I want to hear your wisdom you'll share. So if you were to leave a piece of wisdom that you've learned in your life's journey, which has been quite the journey, what would that life lesson be that you would love to share with others today?
So many things, and so many things that I've already shared. But that, just to wrap up what we've already talked about, an elevated life is available to you. No matter, I say that to every single person that's listening to this. I believe in signs. I believe people hear the things they need to hear. And I believe that if you're listening to this podcast and you've gotten to this point, this is a sign for you. Like an elevated life is available to you for you to tap into. And I will just reiterate that the absence of bad is not a qualifier for a good life. That is not a full life. Just because things are not going wrong does not mean it's right. And I want people to not be afraid of adversity and not be fearful of taking risks, because to do anything bigger, especially to live a life bigger, you're going to have to take some risks. And I wrote a whole chapter about adversity and like how generations before us, adversity was really so much more a part of their lives than it is for us. I feel like now we value comfort more than we do just honor life, and the way that the tough hands that life deals us sometimes when we're trying to do certain things. And so I would just say, hang on, I'm so sorry about my dog.
No, that's
hang on, because I want this to be cohesive.
It's okay. I totally understand.
I'm telling them to. Okay. I would say don't be afraid of adversity, because adversity is the thing that makes the best people among us. If you think of the people that you admire in your life, whether it's Oprah or Tony Robbins or your grandparent, they all experienced some huge adversity in their lives. So why do we fear it so much? Why are we so afraid of adversity that we will not take chances in our one life? I'd like to leave people with that, because I think that fear will back us into a corner and will keep us living mediocre lives if we let it. And mediocre is obviously the opposite of living fully. So yeah, I know that was a lot that we're leaving them with, but I know you give your people a lot of good stuff.
It's so great. It's so great. And I just so appreciate, I know you completely got to run. So I just want to say, I adore you. I appreciate you. Thank you for spending your valuable time and sharing your wisdom with us. I deeply appreciate your podcast and all the goodness.
Thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate it. And everything that you stand for is everything I stand for. I think there's no coincidence that you felt like my name was your name, because we very much have aligned missions that we want to share with people. So that's a compliment for me, because I think a lot of what you do as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, blessings to you. Thank you again.
You too.